Hey guys, thanks for clicking on my video and giving me a little bit of your time. I wanted to start a new project called The Weekly Word. And what I want to do is just spend a few minutes each week just pouring into you guys. It's just something that God put on my heart, really just to kind of give back and give away. I want to talk about a number of different issues. I don't even know what I'm probably going to want to talk about until the week of. I'm going to bring in other pastors, other small group leaders. It's really just aimed to be just a few minute recharge, a few minute word, each week. And what's on my heart to share this week is something that John Wimber used to say. And John Wimber would say that 80% of our ministry always needs to be to God first. Now, I'm not claiming I know really what all of that means, but what I think that means is that 80% of our life and of our ministry should come from a place of worship to God before we start doing stuff with God. And honestly, I bet we understand what God's trying to do in that situation if we spend a lot more time in worship. It's really interesting. In the Old Testament, you'd see stuff like this. Let's say Israel, you'd see they'd come up against a stronger enemy or a more oppressive foe. They'd have more numbers. They'd have better technology, they'd be stronger and stuff like that. And what God would do is he would direct Israel to send in the priests, to send in the Ark of the Covenant, to send in the prophets, to send up the worshipers first to worship the Lord. And then after that, God would give the strength or curse the enemy or do something, and that the Israelites would come through, fight, and then afterwards they'd win and they'd have victory. A lot of times in worship, we discover that the battle has always belonged to the Lord, and it still does. We might not all have church ministries or a small group or something like that, but all of us have a ministry. It's called our lives. All of us have an enemy. It's called the enemy. All of us have problems that we're dealing with them with. It's either coming at us with finances or stuff that's going on at work. Maybe you're looking for a job. Maybe you just don't like your job. Maybe you're dealing with people at your job. It could happen relationally. It could happen with family. It just wherever the context is of your life, we're fighting stuff. And I really encourage you guys to, in those fights, always be coming at them with a heart of worship towards God first. When I have a problem, a lot of times, I'm going into the secret place to really find wisdom and stuff. And I always like to start, or I've learned to start from a place of worship. And from a place of worship, that's generally when I get revelation about the problem. I'm either developing a new perspective, or God's speaking a promise over me, or he's revealing himself, or I get to see what he's revealing himself in this problem, because God is always revealing himself in our problems. Or I'm finding new stuff about me that God is teaching me about me. But all of that comes from a place in a heart of worship. When you don't, I meet people who go through this all the time. They go through life and it seems like just a success and progression of problems, which is, all of our lives, all of us have problems. There's no way you're getting out of that. But if they don't come at it through a heart of worship, they can become cold, they can become bitter, they burn out, they just struggle through life, they develop a negative mindset. And it's just, you can just see that though they've maybe even survived and God has even given them the grace to have victory in their problems and their issues, it's coming at a cost, I always think it's amazing to find people who have really struggled and gone through really hard things, but yet you can still see that their heart's soft. It's still open. They still love God. They still love people. They still trust people. They're still innocent, It's the difference between going through problems with God and problems outside of God. But as you go to problems with God, it always starts with the heart of worship. It always starts with us giving the problem to God, receiving first, and then going at the problem together with God, being a co-creator. This is a lot of what Leif Erikson would talk about with living in chair one. We lean back on God first. I love in the Bible where it talks about the Song of Solomon's, like, behold, one rising out of the desert, leaning on her lover. It's how the church is supposed to be. We go through dry spells, but we're always leaning more into God and more into rest. Well, bless you guys. I hope that encourages you guys to worship. I actually want to talk next week about what a lifestyle of worship looks like. Maybe it's a little bit different than you think. You guys have a blessed week. Hey, hopefully I'll see you tomorrow at our worship night.